Hello there. Today I'm going to be showing you how to create a search component that's going to go alongside with this cat app that we've been working on. Basically, the idea is we're going to have a search bar where you can type in the name of a certain cat breed, and if there is a match, then what will happen is the image of that cat breed will be displayed right underneath the search bar. This is obviously going to be a basic example, but I think it will give you a good idea of how search components might work in a typical React app. So let's begin. So I've created to start our search folder inside of our components folder and made a search.jsx file. And this is just some foundational code. Make sure to import your useState hook. And so let's jump right into it. So the first thing that I like to do when I'm making a new component is to create our variables. In this case, we're going to have 3 useState variables. One is going to be used for detecting when the user has searched for something or not. It's a Boolean statement, right? That's going to be checking if the user is click the submit button, it's going to be set to true. If they haven't clicked anything, then it's going to be set to false. So let's make that first. So this will be our first useState variable, and we're going to call this has searched. And this is going to be set to set has searched. And this is going to be equal to the useState. And the initial value is going to be false, right? Because the initial state is the user not clicking on anything. And now we want to create another useState variable. This one is going to be for, this one is going to be for tracking the search term of the user. In other words, it's going to be tracking what the user is typing into the text field and storing that within a state variable. So we want to have that in a state variable because we want to be taking that value that the user has created inside of the text field and be pairing it up with a potential object inside of our main cat data array, the array that contains all of the cat objects or the cat breeds, and we want to try and match that search value with one of those breeds. So that's why we want this particular search term state variable. So let's create that search term, set search term. This will be equal to an empty string, because the reason for that is because the initial state of the text field is just blank, right? Nothing's being typed into it yet. And our third and final state variable is going to be called search result. Set search result. Now what this is going to be doing is it's basically going to contain, this state variable is going to contain the cat object that had an exact match with the search term, the term that the user typed into the text field. If there is a match with one of those cat objects inside of our cat data array, we want to store that specific object inside of our state variable so that we can access its properties to obtain its image. So we'll set this equal to, initial value is going to be equal to null. And this is because there hasn't been a match yet, right? Nothing's being typed into the text field, nothing to be in search for, so there's no value, there's no object yet. So this will be all of the state variables that we need. The next thing that we want to do is let's create our text field and the search button just so we can see it on the screen, and we'll work from there. That's what I like to do myself. So let's go into our return statement. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a form, and inside this form is going to be a text field with a button, and I'll show you how you can do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to create our input. Excuse me, sorry, I got the hiccups. I'm going to have our input field. Oh, I'm sorry, not our input, our form. And inside our form, inside of our first form tag, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a onSubmit event handler. And the reason for this is because we're going to call the function that we're going to be passing this event into is going to be called handle search. And we haven't created the function yet, but we will in just a second. The reason that we want to use this event handler is because the onSubmit event handler will allow us to access the event that's going to contain that's going to contain the information that we need in order to utilize what's called the prevent default function. And I'll get to that in just a moment. But for now, let's just have this in there. And now what I'm going to do is inside this form tag, we're going to create our text field. Or actually, no, we're going to use a label that's going to be attached to our text field. So let's create this label tag. And inside the first tag is going to be HTML4. We're going to just call this submit. We're going to link this HTML4 up with our text field in just a second. And the label also, we're going to just put in search. And yeah, that looks good. So right below the label, we're going to utilize our input tag. And we can make this self-closing, yeah. And we're going to create some space here. And so we're going to create a type property. The type is going to be called text. The next property is going to be an onChange event handler. And what this is going to do, we're going to be creating a function in just a second called handle input change. What this allows us to do is this stores what the user's typing into the text field as an event object, and inside that object you can access certain properties. In this case, we're interested in the value of what the user is typing into the text field, which is the target.value properties inside of the event object itself. We're sending in that entire object over to our function, and I will show you that in just a moment after we create our text form here. So the next property that we're going to want to do is we're going to be creating what's the next one? Let me think. Oh, the ID. So what this is doing is it's going to match up with our HTML4, and it's going to be called the same thing, submit. So if they click on search, what will end up happening is that you will automatically be taken into the text field where you can just start typing right away just by clicking on this text that's attached to the text field. And I'll show you that once I will display it on the page. Next thing we want to do is we're going to create a value property. And this is actually going to be stored with one of our useState variables. In this case, it's going to be search term. what this is doing is basically it's going to be updating the value of our search term live as the user is typing into the text field. So if the user types in like a single letter, then that letter will be stored inside of the search term variable. If they add in another letter, it's going to instantly update and change that value to that, whatever the second letter is plus the one they previously had. So, and I'll get to that in just a moment as well. But after our value property, we can have a placeholder property, and this is just going to have predetermined text. It's going to be text inside of the text field itself, and I'll show you what that is. You'll see it once I display it. Search for a cat breed. How about that? Okay, and that's it for the input. And we also need the button. That's going to be inside the form as well. So it's all going to be attached in one form. So let's create a button here. This button type is going to be submit. And we'll just have submit be the text for the button. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I want to send over this form into our home page so we can actually see it. So let's go into our return statement here. And let's import our, oh, okay, I already did that. I already imported the search into our home page. So now all I have to do is create an instance of that component. So this will be, oops, this will be search. See what the problem is real quick. Oh, okay, I see. We have to create the functions for this to show up. We'll just create an empty function for now for both of the functions that I mentioned. So handle search and handle input change. So let's do that. Handle search. Remember, this is going to be taking in an event. All right, let's create our other function, handle input change. This is also going to be taking in an event. And there we go, that fixed the error, and now we can clearly see our search. So if you click on the search text, as you can see, it'll instantly take us into the text field where we can start typing. And so now, what we want to do is we want to create the functionality for our two functions that we have right here. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go into our handle input change, and I'm going to be utilizing what's called the prevent default method. So we're going to be taking the input change event. So remember, what's being taken into our function here is an onChange event handler. It's storing whatever the user is typing inside the text field as an object. That's weird. Let me just refresh that. Okay, for some reason it's not letting me type anything into the text field, but that's okay. I'll figure that out in just a moment, but for now, all you got to know is that when the user types some text into this text field, then let me just actually, I'm curious, hold on one second. That is very bizarre. I have not experienced that error before. But that's fine. We'll figure that out in just a moment. But for now, let's create the functionality for our two functions. So what we're going to do is, oh, but first, actually inside of our search instance here, I mentioned earlier, we want to be accessing the entire cat data array because we want to be accessing all of the cat objects, and we want to match up what the user types into the text field with one of the cat breeds inside of our cat data array. So we're going to be passing in cat data, and this will be equal to the cat data array. It's very strange, huh? And next, what I'm going to do is inside of our handle search or handle input change, let me move this up. Inside of our handle input change, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be saying e.prevent default. That may have, no, okay. So what this is doing, it's basically a common method that you use so that the component doesn't re-render needlessly. And inside of the handle search function, oh, actually, I'm sorry, this is incorrect. The handle input change is going to, my mistake. What this is going to be doing, it's going to be, we're going to be targeting our set search term updater function, and we're going to be updating it with the e.target.value. So it's basically going into the event object and going into the target.value properties to take the value of what the user is typing into the text field and storing it within our search term state variable. Next, we're going to be doing e.prevent default. This just helps us with rendering, with React needlessly re-rendering some things. We don't want to have to deal with that. And the next line, we're going to be creating a data variable. So this is what's going to actually be taking the cat data or utilizing the cat data array. Oh, I forgot to mention, since we passed in a prop, we need to actually go into our search arguments here and pass it in. So we're going to say cat data. Go, and inside this data variable, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be utilizing the cat data array that we just passed into our function, and we're going to be using the find function. So the find function, what this does is that it will search through an array, and what it will do is based off of a certain condition, once that condition is met, it goes through each element, and when the condition, if an element matches like the criteria for that condition, it will output that singular element. And so we're going to be calling each element cat, that's fine. And our condition is going to be, we're going to be utilizing the search term, and we're going to be using the toLowercase function. What this is doing is that it's just accounting for capital letters. We don't want to have a situation where the user types in a breed, but it doesn't match because one letter is capital and the other is not. So we don't want to deal with that. And so what do we want the search term to be equal to? We want it to be equal to the name property of our cat object. And we also want to be converting this to lowercase as well. And now, what I'm going to be doing is let me think. Oh yeah. So we're going to be using our has searched state variable here. So we know that if they click on the submit button, excuse me, then we know that we should be changing has searched to true because they clicked on the search button. So we'll go set has searched. This will be true. And with our search result, so this variable is going to contain a singular cat object. We want to be storing that cat object inside of our search result state variable. So we're going to be saying set search result to data. And that should be good. Oh, we can start typing. Again, I think it was because of the prevent default, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. No? Okay, that's weird. Sometimes StackBlitz is kind of weird. But we got it working now, so that's good. So now, what have we done here? Well, we have successfully gone into our cat data array. We have matched what the user's typing into the text field with a particular cat breed inside of our main cat data array. We have stored that potential match inside of our search term variable. And now what we want to do is we want to take that variable, that search result, go inside of its properties to access its image to display below the search component. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into a return statement again, and below our form is where we want to display our image. The first thing that we want to do is we want to create some conditions here. The first of which is we want to know firstly if the user has actually searched for something or not. So what that means is we're going to do some JSX. We're going to say has searched. This is a true or false statement. And what we also want to know is if our search result is a non-null value. In other words, we want to know if search result exists as well. When does it exist? If there was a match with what the user typed into the text field and with one of our cat breeds here. So we'll use the AND operator, and we want to say search result. The next thing that we want to do is do another AND operator, which is going to allow us to render the next piece of information. So this operator can mean and or and or. And or. That's what those two can potentially mean. Oh, I'm sorry, not and or, and if. So this is basic what this is saying. All right, we're checking to see if this is true, and we're checking to see if this has a non-falsy value, and then we're rendering this next piece of information. That's what this is saying. It's a little bit tricky to explain. So what we want to do now is we want to go into our we want to create an image, right? So we'll say image self-closing tag, and the first thing that we'll say is the source of the image. So this is going to be very similar to what we have in our home page here. We're going to be using the same link that we've been using so far, this image link. And we're going to be copying that in there, and we're not going to be using the exact copy. Oops. We're going to actually be changing this cat.reference image ID to search result. That reference.image ID, because the search result cat object is a singular cat object that we're singling out. It's basically the same thing as what this is. It's just that the naming of the individual cat objects are different. That's all it is. And so now we have that. Let's go and we'll name this search result. Oops. Search result dot name, and we'll copy over the styles so everything is just like the same size. Okay. And that should be it. Let's actually test it out. Let's search for a breed. Oops. Okay, so we get an error. Let's see what the error is. Sorry about that. I figured out the error. Of course, it was one single word that I forgot to put in, and it's inside of our find function. We need to be returning something. What was happening is that I wasn't returning anything. This wasn't actually retrieving any data, thus no image was being displayed. So that should fix our problem here. Sorry about that. Really frustrating, but it happens sometimes when you're coding. So now that we put in our cat breed, it should show up. Sure enough, there it is. And there's a lot more that you can do here, but this is like a good foundation to work with to help you get like a basic understanding of what goes on. You could, for instance, use the question mark operator or the tertiary, I can't say that word, basically the question mark operator to allow you to say something along the lines of, if there's no match, you can have some text that will appear that will say something like, there was no cat breed found with that name, something along those lines. You could do something more like perhaps attach a favorite button to this image when it's displayed, so they can like search for the cat breed and favorite it, that sort of thing. You can take it a lot farther, but I figured that this would help you get started. And yep, hope you enjoyed the video. Sorry about the error, but it happens sometimes, and I hope you learned something. Thank you.